Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author and robot, and today is the first day of the month, the first day of the year, video day of the year, first video day of the month. I should clear that up first, which means it is LMIAY time. I don't even remember what the prompt was for January LMIAY. So we're all going to be a little bit surprised. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do on this channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate the time and energy that you give me on this channel and all of the featured writers on this channel. Number two is, if you'd like to be featured on this channel, check out the links in the description below. You should see two, one which is LMIAY and the other one which is Fresh Meat Feature, which I'll talk more about on Thursday's video. But you can kind of get the down low with the link down below before I talk heavily about it. So yeah, with that said, let's go ahead and get into the stories. Now, if you're new to the channel, LMIAY is my monthly challenge where I give you guys a prompt and you guys answer it with a short story or a fragment of something longer that fits into that prompt, and then I read it. And if you're featured on this channel, you're free to share any social media that you have to direct people to, because this series is all about you guys, your creativity, and finding more writers. So, with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, and if you notice something's a little different, I'm going to try to do things slightly different here to make it better. I don't know if it will be. So, thank you for sticking with me as I experiment with different ways to make this work. So, in keeping with tradition and themes of it being January, the challenge for this month's LMIAY was the start of a story, a relationship, a fight, a series of unfortunate events, anything. It just had to be the start of something, and it was left up to you guys to interpret what the start was and what it was for. So, those are the prerequisites for the stories we're about to hear. Let's get started. The first story is by Armanis Ar-feinial. Not of my own choice, I became a hero for peace and did whatever I was ordered to do. I killed and killed and killed. I killed without halting. I killed until at last my heart stopped beating. Every life I removed meant that I was one step closer to brokering world peace. And then, at last, I achieved it. With such an impossible task, you'd think that would make me happy. But that wasn't the reward I acquired. Because I became unnecessary, and I was framed for treasonous activity, not of my own doing, and I was executed, again and again and again. Samantha and Jennifer sat upon their checkered picnic blanket, their cooler onto the side. They were sitting at the Boston Common across the street from Park Street Church. The church overlooked them. The grand church spanned the entirety of the corner of Park Street and Tremont Street, hovering over the opposite side of the common. The red bricks of the church were dotted with 2 rows of contrastingly white windows, square on the bottom row and grandly arched on the top. There was a clock on all 4 sides of the brick church leading up to the belfry, and the belfry above, pointed upward like a castle tower, was white, reflecting off the light of the bright sun. Samantha and Jennifer took great care in getting the creases out of the blanket. Samantha laid face up, letting the sun beat down on her face, shielded by large sunglasses. She was resting in her t-shirt and gym shorts, with her arms resting at her sides. Jennifer was laying right next to her, her face away from the sun as she lay on her belly, her legs bent in the air, shoeless, and buried her face in Pride and Prejudice. Samantha heard the birds chirping as they fluttered to the treetops, and the dogs barking at squirrels scampering up the trees. She heard the annoying sound of some pop music being played by some obnoxious college kid with his boombox. I thought those were out of style. Those shouldn't even be a thing anymore. She saw at the corner of her eye Jennifer twirling her brown hair in her finger. Samantha glanced at her silver-chained watch wrapped around her wrist. Her ponytails rested at either side of her golden head. 3:27, she read aloud and enclosed her hand to a hard fist. Samantha didn't like being kept waiting. When are they gonna get here? The sandwiches are going to get soggy. They really know how to ruin a good picnic. Patience is a virtue, Jennifer snickered, bowing her head deeper into the book before putting her plain bookmark into the pages, before closing the book, before turning a playful smile to Samantha. You know Michael. And Tim is usually only along for the ride. Michael likes to take his time, never rush to do anything. You'd think that he'd be able to keep time better. She was being sarcastic, reflecting on work that Michael does. Business consultant. Maybe he's working. On a Saturday? Fat chance. Jennifer cackled out loud, turning on her back and covering her face with her arms. More likely that he's just lounging around, waiting to come until the last minute. Michael does what Michael does. Jennifer twirled her left wrist in her hair. Not like me, Samantha spoke plainly, clicking her tongue. Consulting and logistics are two completely different things. No, but who comes 30 minutes early for everything except you? You are unnecessarily early for everything. Jennifer chuckled, removing her arms from her face, squinting at the afternoon sun. I swear, you wouldn't be yourself if you didn't get to your funeral 30 minutes early. Samantha shot a sharp glare at her. Jennifer wasn't looking. Her eyes were closed as her face was pointed to the sky. Samantha closed her eyes again and turned her face toward the sun. She looked up into the clouds and looked at the shapes in the sky. Samantha reflected on this. Yeah. She was early to everything, with anxiety if she wasn't running at least 15 minutes early, but was it really all that necessary? Perhaps she could pray about her anxiety for such trivial matters. I'm not that bad, am I? Samantha didn't think that she was that bad, just punctual. Though she found more often than not that her version of punctual was typically 15 minutes early. She was never late. Well, yeah, Jennifer told her, rather sarcastically. I invited you over to my house after dinner, which was at 5. I invited you at 6 p.m., and you showed up in the middle of my dinner. You really are funny with time. Wait, Samantha pointed at the sky. Look right there. It's a cloud. It looks like... What? Jennifer interrupted, opening her eyes as she shielded them with her hands. Don't tell me. No. Don't. Sam! Sam! No, bad! That's bad! Sam, don't say it! It's a curtain van, she exclaimed. You really need to stop taking work home with you. You really need to stop taking work home with you, Jennifer sighed as she looked at the cloud which Samantha pointed at. She saw something different. I see a cloud, an image of condensed gaseous water. Only you would be excited to see some logistic import solution in the sky. She looked closely at it and rubbed her chin and smiled. That might be something, now wouldn't it? A very entertaining idea to have a freight truck in the sky somewhere. No wonder my lab supplies never show up on time. This next story is by Mineya. They're scared. Look at them. Don't make it so obvious. They are scared of me, David Socks thought to himself with a fresh adrenaline rush of excitement and anxiety. The young man looked around the room, clumsily fiddling with his index finger in the front pocket of his hooded jumper. How did I get here? What the heck am I doing? He thought to himself, pacing back and forth. All around the room stood nervous patrons, their eyes darting across the room from the bubblegum stains on the floor to the fire sprinkler system on the roof. They were looking at everything they could, but him. David paced around the room some more, each footstep feeling lighter than the others, making careful work not to step on the pile of cell phones in the middle of the room. Hey, I know you, he pointed at a portly man sitting beneath the countertop. Not so tough now, are ya? David Socks approached the man with glee, leaning down to meet the man's eye to eye. Please, Oh, I'm sorry. So 30 minutes ago, you were more than happy screaming at me about your toaster burning your bread. And when I tried to explain to you that the numbers on the dial represented the minutes the bread cooks for and to maybe turn it down, you asked to speak to my manager. Well, look how the tables have turned. David's free hand flayed around the room in a circular motion. Beads of sweat began to build on the portly man's forehead. Look at you. You're pathetic. I'm sorry. You weren't sorry 30 minutes ago, David shouted, the vein in his neck bulging. He stopped to collect himself, taking in a deep breath of the stale, recycled air and listening to the elevator music he'd become too accustomed to drowning out over the many monotonous years. Excuse me? A quiet, timid voice quivered from behind. David snapped his head around to his rear, his body following quickly behind. Yes, miss. How can I help you today? He said calmly, with a bright smile on his face. I need to use the bathroom, the young lady said, looking down at the floor, crossing her legs while also twisting her finger into knots. David straightened up his posture and fixed the name tag on his jumper. Oh, why, of course, miss. The bathrooms are located over... Wait a minute. No. Now is not the time for that. The woman flinched at the sound of David yelling. No more funny business. I'm in control here, and you will all just stay where you are, and be quiet if you know what's good for you. He shifted his finger in the front of the hooded pocket, pointing it toward everyone in the room. There was a strange satisfaction from the way they flinched and squirmed. David felt like a king, ruling over the people, a fantasy he'd so often had while wasting his days away working a dead-end 9-to-5 job, selling small appliances to ungrateful masses. Just 30 minutes ago, David Socks was sitting in his manager's office, nervously squirming, his eyes focusing on everything but the balding middle-aged man in the cheap suit sitting opposite him. He wasn't about to cry. It was just the sting of his manager's cheap cologne piercing his eyes. At least, that's what David chose to believe. Here at Empress Appliances, we aren't just salesmen or saleswomen. We're sales professionals, and we pride ourselves on making a difference. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Good. We pride ourselves on killing our customers with kindness. Service with a smile. So when that old lady comes in to replace her 40-year-old microwave, you'll ask the qualifying questions and get her that new microwave oven she's going to have until she dies. And you best make sure that she gets the accessories she needs. And if Jeffrey Dahmer were to walk through those doors, we don't turn him away. We show him where he can keep his head cool. The man smiled confidently. So, when a regular customer tells you his toaster is burning his bread, you don't accuse him of having the toaster set too high. You upsell him a sandwich press with the extended warranty. Back when I was a salesman, I'd have customers lining up to see me. They loved me, because I would have offered to give that man my lunch if it meant I'd get the sale in the process. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. Good. Now, I'm giving you a permanent file note about the conversation. Take a breather. Be back by 2 p.m. I want to see an extended warranty being sold with a smile before you go today. Just 30 minutes ago, David Socks was sitting in his manager's office listening to another motivational speech designed to boost his morale and make someone else a nice profit. In that 30 minutes, David Socks spent 3 minutes gathering up his belongings, 1 minute to leave the store, 2 minutes looking through the windows, 3 minutes pacing back and forth outside, 5 minutes convincing himself that this was a bad idea, 1 minute to stop and breathe before walking through the glass doors, and another minute to get everyone on the floor, and 3 minutes to collect their mobile phones, 8 minutes for the manager to fill up his backpack with money, and 3 minutes to leave the shopping mall. In just 30 minutes, David Socks became the most wanted bank robber in America, armed with just a hooded jumper and an index finger. And in that 30 minutes, David Socks became the most wanted man on the Vincenzo Canaleone's hit list. The final story of today is by Flies-are-spies. The couple curled into one another, shrouded in wool blankets. Because you have never seen a miracle, is all, Erica said. Well, I have seen supernatural events, things I could not explain. Like what? She asked. It's freaky. I don't know if I should tell you. Rusty felt a disclaimer was in order. I'm sure I can handle it. Erica tugged at the blanket. A look from her entitled eyes pressed Rusty for details. She wiggled her cheeks on the cold pillow, building friction. Rusty's fingers relocated a lock of hair from Erica's face. Okay, you've been warned. I once lived with a girl in Kentucky. One Saturday morning, the phone woke us out of bed. I answered it. It was her dad asking to speak with his daughter. So I handed her the phone and tried to eavesdrop on the conversation. Erica hiked the blanket closer, tucking it under her chin. I heard her say, "Okay, Daddy, I love you. Have fun." She hung up and we rolled out of bed. It was around 10:45 a.m. I asked her what her dad was doing. She answered, he's gone to a sweat lodge in New Mexico with this Native American group, that he loved me and would call back later. I thought, cool. Maybe he'll find his spirit animal or some kind of vision. I didn't know what he had actually planned. I would have thought that too, Fizz said. So, we made blueberry coffee and I went to the sunroom to read. My ex-girlfriend, without having touched her coffee, laid on the couch and fell back asleep. Again, she slept on the couch at the other end of the house. I thought that this was weird as she was only awake for 20 minutes. Why the hell did she fall asleep after having slept for 9 hours? Maybe she was tired, Fitz said. Yeah, anyway, I'm reading my book and the sunroom grew ominously dark. A thunderstorm rolled in, casting a black shadow. Black shadow. It was unusual. Massive lightning struck on our backyard. The lightning was so bad, I unplugged the computer and TV. The thunder boomed, hitting close to our house. Close enough, hair stood on my arms from static. Sheesh, Fizz said. Yeah, I went to check on her and she was still asleep. Snoring, in fact. Damn, I thought. She must have been out. That's what I thought, too. So I walked closer, studying her while she slept balled up on the couch, her back to me. I thought about waking her because I was worried that she might get a caffeine headache, as she often did when she didn't drink her coffee every day or slept too long, but I didn't wake her. Yet. Fitz wrapped the blanket around her feet, no doubt to curb her fear. Then what? I went back into the sunroom and resumed my book. Every half hour I walked over to check to see if she'd woken. Around 2:30, the storm relented. Finally, I traded the urge to wake her for the courage to do so. I went into the living room, walked over and nudged her shoulder. She stirred back, didn't wake, and I nudged her a little harder. She turned and opened her eyes. I was met with vacant eyes as she looked straight through me. Not at me, but through my eyes, straight to the back of my skull. Fitz curled herself as close to Rusty as she could. She reached around and tucked wool under her butt, closing any open-air gaps that would allow boogeymen to penetrate her cloaked shield barrier. Her hollow eyes looked at me while she said, "Oh, hi, Daddy." "What?" Fitz asked. "Yeah, exactly. So I looked at her and I laughed it off. You're still asleep. Wake up. You're sleep-talking." Rusty paused, swallowing to avoid coughing. She said to me, "I know. I love you, Daddy." "Whoa," Fitz said. She rolled and went back to sleep for about 15 minutes. Then she actually woke up and walked into the kitchen to brew a fresh pot of coffee. I told her what she said while she was sleep-talking. She couldn't remember a thing. And we joked about it while we waited for a fresh pot of coffee. "Creepy," Fitz said, rubbing nervous toes on the blanket. "But wait, there's more," Rusty said. Fitz sensed truth in the convictions of Rusty's goose-bumped arms. About 30 minutes later, the phone rang and I answered it. It was her father's scratchy voice. Dude sounded raspy, like he'd been screaming drunk at an all-night rave, asking to speak to his daughter. "What did you do?" "Shit, I handed her the phone. She murmured something into it, something that I couldn't understand. Moments later, she hung up, crying. Bawling tears. I thought she'd received bad news. Maybe an accident in the sweat lodge or a family emergency. Something made her very upset, and I begged to know what made her cry. But she refused to say. I asked her repeatedly until she capitulated. Conditions were, I was never to mention it to her father. Promises made, promises kept sort of shit. But until I swore secrecy, she refused to tell me, so I promised. She said, Daddy told me he visited me while I slept on the couch and that I looked so peaceful. He did not want to disturb my nap. Fitz stopped rubbing her toes on the blanket. Rusty broke the silence with pondered questions. How the hell did her dad know that she would be on the couch, sleeping, and at 2 in the afternoon, after he knew that she was climbing out of bed 3 hours earlier? And why did she call me Daddy when I tried to wake her? Astral projection? Fitz asked. Astral possession, more likely, Rusty said. Bruh. Did you write me Jeffrey Dahmer in there because you know me so well? I don't know. You guys are so insanely interesting and so talented and so creative when you bring this stuff that I am flabbergasted every time I read the submissions for LMIAY. It's one of the reasons why this is my favorite video to do every month, because just like the images that I see, look, if I had the money, animating some of this stuff would be so much fun. Or, you know, the artistic talent. But I don't have that kind of artistic talent. Some may question I have any artistic talent whatsoever. But, wow, just you guys. And seriously, I had to pause when I was reading and I traded the urge to wake for the courage to do so. You've got a great writing style, my dude. So thank you to everybody who submitted for this video, and thanks to everybody who checked it out. Tell me in the comments which of the 3 stories was your favorite and why. And if you enjoyed any of these guys, check out their social media links in the description below to see what they are going to do next, and keep an eye on them, because I can tell you, based on this stuff, they're going places. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great first week of 2022. Let's put some good vibes out there and imagine that it's going to be good, so that we can manifest goodness. Yeah. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great Monday, and don't die.